to the Personal Injury Law Show. This is a show that talks about everything current in the law of personal injuries and of importance to you, the viewer. My name's Tony Carbone, personal injury lawyer, 30 years experience. With me tonight I've got Don Karantzis, accredited law specialist in a law firm in workers' compensation. Good evening, John.
Hi, Tony. Hi, Don. Hi, viewers.
And Don Maffia, the partner in the law firm in transport accidents. Good evening, Don.
Good evening, Tony. Good evening, viewers.
And tonight, viewers, we're going to have the best of a wrap-up of all the events that occurred during the year. We're going to be talking about Malaysian Airlines, Ebola, so stay tuned.
It's the last episode for 2014.
Yes.
Tony, yes.
That's correct.
So we'll be back next year, of course.
Of course.
Let's hope the government don't get rid of Channel 31, John. Then we might not be back.
Well,
that's the problem.
Yes, that's a problem.
Yeah.
But however, before we get to all that, Tony, what's in the news?
A cyclist has been sued for causing injuries. Tell us a bit about the facts.
Yeah, there's a cyclist in Canberra, Tony, that was riding his bike next to his friend on a bike as well. He fell over, he caused the bike, he hit a tree, he caused the guy on the side to fall over and get hit by a car. And he's been sued personally, and the damages are $1.7 million.
Geez, there must be a lot of damage here, John.
So it's alleged, Tony, that the cyclist was in the wrong here.
Yes.
He's been negligent in his actions and he has caused injury to the claimant.
Well, to get to $1.7 million, Don, there must be some serious injuries going on here.
Yes.
Yeah, I believe so. But this just goes to show that cyclists can be personally, and if they cause an injury, personally liable. It looks like this guy who caused the injury, he had some insurance. If he had no insurance, then that comes out of his own pocket.
Well, that's why it's
the money.
important that the cyclists out there is the message. If you're part of one of these cycling clubs, you're generally covered by insurance because they take out insurance.
Yeah.
Or at the very least, take out your own insurance.
Well, that's right. Oh, I totally agree. And a lot of home and contents, their own home contents insurance will cover these sort of incidents. You just need to check.
Don, in Victoria, this will be covered by the Transport Accident Commission.
That's correct, John. If it happened in Victoria involving a motor vehicle, then the person is entitled to receive benefits from the TAC.
Exactly. Yeah.
But given the extent of the injuries, they'll still be able to sue the cyclist because he'll have a serious injury. But there are many incidences where there is no vehicle involved. There's another case which they detail in this article where a cyclist hit a 7-year-old girl and broke her legs. Ooh. So he could be personally liable, sue him directly.
Well, Don, I've got another example. A fellow's getting out of his car, a cyclist is tearing down the road, strikes him, he falls over, tears his rotator cuff. That's a pretty serious injury, isn't it?
Oh, yes.
Yeah.
Oh, yes.
And the cyclist then comes off his bike, he gets his details. If he's not insured, he's going to be liable personally, isn't he, Don?
Well, that's correct. So the message to the viewers is to look to, if you are a cyclist, to investigate entitlements or insurance policies they can hold. Like I said, a lot of home and contents insurance can cover these type of incidents.
Or the Cycling Association, the insurance is very, very cheap. So if you become a member, I don't know what they pay, it's about $50, $60 maybe.
It's not a lot.
Yeah, they automatically take insurance out for you. So please take heed of that because you could be $1.7 million, you'd be working for your whole life to pay it off.
Exactly.
What about this bizarre story, John? A boy is feeding a bear in a Chinese zoo and he gets his arm ripped off.
Oh, it's a shocking story, Tony. It just goes to show these facilities, these zoos, even in Melbourne, Australia, Tony, they have to ensure that people can't put their hands and their limbs
Well, how could he reach?
in the actual facility.
I don't think the fence was very close to where that bear was hanging around.
It wouldn't be like that in Australia, surely. I haven't been to the zoo in ages, I'm sure you've been.
I have done it with the kids.
No?
No, look, in Australian terms, there's quite a distance between the fence and where the animals are habitated.
Yeah.
But in this one, it looks like the bear was just right there because he put his arm through. A 9-year-old, it's not a long arm, and the arm was amputated. The whole arm.
Shocking.
No, I thought he ripped it off.
Shocking.
Oh, they had to amputate in the end. Whatever was left of it. Yeah.
Shocking.
And so let's hope the law in China is similar to the common law.
I doubt it, Tony.
You don't think he's going to get paid?
Zero.
No?
In China.
Well, if that happened in Victoria, you'd be worth an absolute fortune, wouldn't
Exactly.
you? You'd be outraged.
Exactly.
Victorian woman offered compensation after being run over by her dog. What kind of bizarre circumstances is this one, Doc?
Bizarre but common.
Yeah.
This is where a lady's got two dogs, has put them in the car. She left the car running for the air conditioner. Must have been a hot day. And then when she stepped out for some reason, tries to get back in, and one of the dog jumps, hits her handbrakes, car rolls, and she hurts herself. In fact, sustained quite significant injuries that resulted in having both shoulder joints replaced.
So wait a minute.
Hip injuries, knees, everything.
A dog has hit the handbrake in the car
And released the car.
And the car has run over the poor lady.
Oh, massive
she got caught in the... because she was trying to step out.
She's made an application for TAC benefits.
Yes.
Correct.
Under the no-fault provisions.
Because it's during the driving of her vehicle.
Well, it's an out-of-control vehicle, and that falls in within the scheme of transport accident.
Yes.
And entitles her to compensation in the sense of medical expenses, wages, and a lump sum if her permanent impairment is greater than 10%.
In this case, it's 140 grand.
140 grand.
She must have some fair income injuries to get 140 plus
both
$1,000.
shoulders
Don't you reckon,
Both
Don?
shoulders replaced, neck, back, and I think hip as well.
What sort of
Quite
percentage are we
significant.
talking here, Don?
Oh, this will be over the 50s.
Yeah.
Over 50?
Yeah.
So that means she's entitled
She
to
could be
loss of
entitled
income
wages.
as well?
Yep.
John, she's going to get loss of income indefinitely?
Permanent, yeah.
That's bizarre, isn't it?
Quite significant.
And so, for common law, she'll be suing the dog, I take it?
Nah, there's no common law. Not unless, hey, Don, you got cause for concern, mate. They're going to start suing parents. What are you going
I
to
hope not,
find if their kids are bullying other kids?
Well,
do you like this law?
Well, at the moment, you can be, in Canada, the parents could be liable in a sense of civilly and criminally for their children cyberbullying.
So this is blame the parents.
Bottom line, I reckon if your kid goes to school picking on every man and his dog, the parents have got a bit to blame. No?
Oh, it's a long bow, Tony. But
Why is it a long bow? Don't you reckon it starts in the house?
Well, this is for cyberbullying.
Yeah.
So this is, you assume things like this will be done at home where the parents could have some control.
Oh, okay.
I think, like John said, it probably extends a bow a bit too long if it's parents responsible for the kids' bullying actions
I actually
outside
like
the
it.
home. Well, it's a deterrent in some ways.
People learn respect in that at home. That's my view.
Respect and responsibility?
Yeah, of course, John.
That's very...
If you don't teach them from a younger... When you get a... Hey, listen, let's get back to the dog.
That's not a concept of law, is it, Tony?
No, it's moral obligations of parents to ensure that their kids behave appropriately.
I think it's where the situation where the parents could have some... Well, the parents could have some control. And if it's at home, it's happening at home, computer access and all those things, cyberbullying, the parents should be involved.
Stay tuned. After the break, we're going to be taking you and recapping all the major stories that occurred this year. Viewers, welcome back to the show. It's been very entertaining so far. I've got a couple of out-of-control lawyers around me. We're going to do the stories, the big stories this year, John.
Best of 2014, Tony.
Malaysian Airlines, Don. You want to kick us off with that one?
Well, for the viewers, of course, just recapping, there was 2 planes, Malaysian Airlines. One disappeared in March of this year, and the other one in July was shot down. That's strange.
John, what about this disappearance of this plane? What do you reckon it is? I mean, it's
Tony,
just extraordinary.
Most likely, it'll never be found.
Now, let's talk about Compo.
Yeah.
Are the families of the one that got shot down entitled to compensation, John?
Yes, Tony, under the Montreal Convention, $195,000 Australian is all you get. Is all you get. Yep,
Yeah.
that's all you get.
But apparently there's litigation going on in the States, all around the world.
Well, the Montreal Convention sort of brings in 2 tiers of compensation. The first one is a strict liability.
Yes.
So, like John said, it's $195,000. That is payable.
Yes.
The second tier is that in excess of that amount, you can still sue them if you like, but the onus is on the aircraft carrier to prove that they weren't at fault.
The Montreal Convention has been picked up by the Civil Aviation Carriers Liability Act 1959 Commonwealth with amendments. And the important thing for the Australians that were killed in this incident is that the maximum they can get under the Air Carriers Liability Act is $500,000. But in the States, Don, there's a lot more money you can get. But I guess you've got to have some sort of connection to the States.
Exactly.
So the Australians, the best they can do is about, what, 500,000, John?
Approximately, Tony, yes.
Yeah,
and look, the connection for America would be that you've bought the ticket in America.
Or you're an American citizen, I guess.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly.
The whole point,
Tony, it's a very sad story, isn't it?
Oh, it's just outrageous.
I think Malaysia Airlines has a bit of an image problem I'm surprised they haven't rebranded, Tony.
Well, I think that it's been sold, isn't it?
Oh, it's a government airline, so...
Who's got the airline now?
I think it's the government stepped in, but Tony, I think it's right. It's under the aircraft, or in this case, the Montreal Convention, which is adopted by many countries. There's, like I said, there is a strict liability, so you get a certain amount without proving anything, just that you're on the plane. And the second thing is that you do have a right to sue, but as you know, there's limits across every country.
And the search still continues, and look, we hope one day something will come up.
Well, eventually. Also, John, in that one that got shot down, the authorities that govern the airspace are getting sued. The Ukraine government's getting sued. Well, Boeing's getting sued for manufacturer's liability. Every man and his dog's getting sued.
The Russians are being blamed. You know, Mr. Abbott's supposed to shirt front Putin. We're waiting with bated breath on that part. But I actually don't think he knows what shirt fronting mean. In AFL, it's like that, not like that. So I don't know.
Do you reckon if there was more Americans that were shot down in this plane, the Americans would have taken a bigger stand against the Russians?
I think so, Tony. I mean, and like every country was affected by this because every nationality in those planes, as they usually are, Tony.
John and Don, Ebola.
So Ebola, which is affecting the African continent, and now with people, particularly the volunteers that go, Doctors Without Borders, that go and help these people, there is an outbreak that has reached the shores of America.
The US?
The US. I think England's hit as well.
Yep.
There's a few scares in Australia.
There's been over 10,000 people affected by Ebola so far, if not more.
So, Tony, did this start in the Ebola River?
Yeah, well, it's called Ebola because that's where it eventuated from.
Gee.
Yeah.
It was
Ebola
first
River. Recognised in 1976. So it's been around for a while.
Oh, yeah.
So why isn't there a cure?
Well, it's just like a lot of things, John. Cancer, AIDS... You know, just things that... Influenza, we haven't even got a cure for that.
So anyone that goes to Africa and then comes back, they can be liable for their actions, can't they, Tony?
I think that more so if they're aid workers, because the authorities should then possibly, I know there's arguments against this, quarantine them, Don.
Well, in America, there's a lady who came back, she was at Doctors Without Borders, came back from Sierra Leone. And that's where she was exposed to Ebola.
Yes.
She came back, they put her back in they took her to her hometown and put in quarantine for 21 days and put on a curfew in the sense that she could not leave her house at all for the 21-day period.
And now she wants to sue for...
And she went to court, this is in the US, and she went to the court, and the court did not agree with the authorities and said, well, you can't do that because she showed no symptoms of...
False imprisonment.
It was false imprisonment. She showed no symptoms of Ebola, so therefore she was free to leave. All she had to do was check in with the doctors just to make sure her temperature and all that's all right.
And if she happens to infect anyone, well, that's their bad luck.
Well, that's the balance, John.
Do you know if by any chance, right... No, sorry, for the period she was incarcerated or locked up so she can't go out... Quarantine, right? Yeah. She can sue for that, you know that? False imprisonment.
It's false imprisonment.
Yeah, but we have to protect the public, Tony.
I appreciate that, but she had no symptoms, nothing.
John, where do you draw the line?
She's come back from in effect, a war zone. So, Tony, what we're talking about here is a very infectious disease which can infect thousands of people. So she should be quarantined, Tony.
Look, I'm in line with what you're saying, John, but in a situation where, with this nurse, she had no symptoms whatsoever. True, Don?
No, that's true. I disagree with John. I mean, this is just completely raising the fears of the public where she had no symptoms. I mean, every person that comes back from any African country that has been exposed to Ebola are going to be put in quarantine.
And on that note, viewers, stay tuned. We're going to a sponsors break. Welcome back to the show. We're talking about recapping what's happened this year. The one-punch laws, John. I mean, the 10 years, is that enough?
Look, I think it is, Tony. The Victorian government has done the right thing and really made sure that any yobbo that's out there that hits someone and causes usually a fatal injury, Tony, will be jailed a minimum of 10 years.
Isn't the real issue, Don, that you throw a punch, the person's knocked to the ground, and it's that consequence of hitting the ground that most of the damage actually occurs.
That's correct.
And that's what I get, these brain injuries.
Tony, they're coward punches.
They are
they're unexpected. So you'll be people walking in the street and someone will just come over and hit them in the back of the head and they fall over. So it's very tragic. I mean, they causes, and unfortunately most of them cause death.
Yep.
And also, in the case of David Kassai, the one that died in Rye, the young man that died in Rye, the actual person that punched him was a martial arts expert.
Exactly.
I mean, what do you teach people martial arts for? To go beating people up or to defend themselves?
No, and he was jailed for a minimum term of 6 years, Tony. It's probably not enough, but at the same time, that's wrecked that person's life also, hasn't it, Tony?
Exactly.
So hundreds of people's lives have been affected by this one stupid act.
Especially the parents and the siblings.
Exactly.
Yeah. And Don, can I say this? I don't reckon 10 years is enough. I'll tell you why. This argument that I didn't intend to kill him goes out the door, because how many incidents have we had where one punch has actually led to death or serious injury?
Serious injury.
Yeah.
And I agree, because the intent is to hurt someone.
Exactly.
To punch someone to hurt someone. In these situations too, like I said, there's coward punches. Your intent is to cause maximum damage to the person.
Exactly.
So is 10 years enough? Probably not.
No.
And also, again, the offender, it opens them up to be sued civilly.
Oh, they will get sued. There's no doubt about it.
Exactly.
Well, the family can sue, and if, like I said, unfortunately, most cases end in death. But if someone gets punched, or one punch victim, and gets injured, they have a right to sue as well for the physical injuries. Exactly. And Tony, there's no threshold. There's no threshold to sue.
You can just sue automatically.
You just sue automatically, intentional tort.
Who's going to care for him?
Exactly.
That's the other problem, isn't it, Don?
Exactly.
Yeah. So please, message to the viewers: think twice about hitting anyone. Forget about punching anything.
Now, Tony, you've had an incident recently with the fire brigade.
Oh, John, look, we love the fireys and we're out there trying to support them and trying to get that law passed.
Changing laws, yes.
Yeah, to recognise presumptive legislation. But the incident just briefly goes as this. A tenant sets off a sprinkler system in an apartment block, 18 stories, okay? The fire brigade gets called because the alarms go off.
Of course.
3 fire brigades go out there. They disconnect the mains because 6 levels of apartment block have been flooded.
Oh.
Then what does the fire department do? They send a bill for $9,500 because it was a false alarm.
To who? To the landlord?
To the body corporate.
Oh, to the body corporate.
Everyone's got to pay for it. Because it was a false alarm. If there was a fire, there wouldn't be a bill. And because there's no fire, you get billed for it.
But Tony, what does the fire services levy then do?
People, it's a fallacy out there. The fire services levy only covers training and equipment for the fireys. It doesn't cover the cost of the fire brigade coming out to your property, none of that. Did you know that?
No.
I didn't know until recently.
So homeowners in these type of situations are liable for the cost of the attendance by the fire brigade?
If there's no fire. And it's in the discretion of the fire department, because they put it to their board. If you haven't got a reasonable explanation as to why they were called out there, mind you, the only people that can switch off a mains is the fire department.
So they have to
still
go
got to... Yeah.
But
they said it wasn't necessary.
But isn't it that, I guess the policy behind it is that you're taking them away from a real emergency. So if you've got 3 fire trucks at a commission because they're attending one property when there was a real emergency down the road. So I guess it's
the insurance company said to me, in the days when they used to collect the fire services levy, if this incident had occurred, they would have covered the cost of a fire brigade. But because this fire services levy is not charged by the insurance companies anymore, they refuse to cover the cost of the tenants.
But Tony, that amount that's been fined to a body corporate, can they recover from the tenant that caused this fire?
The tenant's got nothing. The tenant's got nothing. The tenant's a student, John. What's he going to pay? 50 cents a week for the next 25 years? It's insane. All I'll say is this. It's something that's got to be looked at. I think it's outrageous that, you know, the only person that can possibly switch off the mains is the fire brigade.
Yes.
And they say it's not necessary. I don't... Look, anyway, like I said, we are champions of the plight of the firefighters.
Oh, yes.
But this is, as far as I'm concerned, outrageous. Let's keep moving. Don, the TAC changes, they've been, you know, there's a massive saving to TAC.
Draconian changes, Tony.
Just for the viewers to recap, in October, mid-October last year, there was some changes to legislation made which affected the compensation available to people who sustained psychiatric injuries. And they essentially made the test very difficult, that in fact, since October of last year, TAC have not processed any severe psychiatric claims.
They can't. You've got to wait 3 years.
Well,
so it's too onerous. So what's the saving now?
147 million.
There's an article out recently which they've saved $146 million.
That's only since last year.
And that's in 1 year.
So this goes to show those changes have had a great effect.
So in effect, the Victorian Liberal government has legislated away your rights to sue for a psychological injury arising out of a transport accident.
Well, has it, look,
it's made it more impossible.
It's made it more difficult than what it already was, which I think there was no need because I'm protected by the...
Don, you know the worst part about the whole change? John, you need to see a psychiatrist on a regular basis. So it just reinforces your problems, doesn't it?
Exactly.
Every 2 minutes you're rocking up to a psychologist.
I just think it's a change that was made without having true regard to how people who have suffered psychiatric injuries feel.
Yeah.
So a lot of people with psychiatric injuries don't seek treatment because they can't seek treatment because of their condition.
All right.
So it goes around in circles.
OK, just on that, the TAC are now trying to change the law in relation to spinal injuries.
Well, that's
They're trying to tighten the law there again.
They're trying to tighten the law. So it'll be interesting to see, John, because the Labor government has made some announcements about what they'll do with their laws, and they'll try and reverse the laws. So if the Labor government gets the power, we may not see this, we don't know, it's election discussion. But as it is at the moment, the intent of the TSC was to save money, and they have. $146 million.
The only thing I'd like to say is protect the rights of injured people.
Exactly.
Isn't that right?
Exactly.
All right. Media patrol of alleged terror suspects. This is it relates to that kid that was put on in the papers by accident. They put the wrong picture.
Yeah.
And
well, if you're innocent and you have nothing to do with terrorism,
should be a lot.
You shouldn't be on the front page of the newspaper.
Well, he's sought for defamation.
It was a full page.
And secondly, Tony, you've got a bloody good claim, haven't you?
Of course you have, John. At the end of the day, right, your picture's put in the paper, they've got to protect and make sure that they've got the right person.
Exactly.
They put the wrong kid.
Shocking.
You know, instead of putting the one that actually stabbed the police, they've got to put some guy willy-nilly out of a blue.
I don't see how they got it so wrong.
Sophie Brown, our chief researcher, there's a few of them, is leaving the show next year.
She's the chief.
She's
the chief. I want to thank Sophie for all her efforts over the last few years. She's been fantastic.
Fantastic.
Don?
Fantastic. Yeah, thanks, Sophie, for your help. It's been great, and good luck in your future endeavours.
John, just in general, if anyone gets injured or anything like that, what should they do?
Tony, if you're injured, you're entitled to compensation if it wasn't your fault. And a lot of times, even if it was your fault or you were injured in circumstances where blame is questionable, you should ring up a personal injury lawyer and we will advise you as to your entitlements.
And on that note, thanks for watching the show. Stay tuned for next year. Go to our website and all those fancy social media sites these days, and always remember to stay safe.